I'll give everyone a minute to pile in. I think this is going to be an absolutely riveting panel here today. It's on the top of everyone's minds, and that is a lot of the market and price action. Without further delay, though, I want to invite everyone up, and let's start with Anu Bhardwaj. She's here with us today, leader of Women Investing in Women, and also Crypto Queens. Well, I'll join you over here, Anu. Let me give you a seat here. Have a seat. Million followers on Facebook. Wonderful individual. Also with us is Daniel Schwartzkopff. He's the founder of Invictus Capital. It's a $100 million cryptocurrency index fund. Daniel, thanks for being with us, and have a seat next to Anu. Next to Anu. No. Oh, okay. I stand corrected. Jeffrey's with us today. Jeffrey Wernick, who's an early cryptocurrency investor. Jeffrey, thanks so much for joining us. We're excited to have you as well. And last but not least, Tim Enneking is with us as well. Short long hedge fund manager, very active in the crypto space. Again, riveting conversation is headed our way. I'll be taking the seat at the end. I am going to leave on this one about 10 minutes or so for questions and a Q&A. Why? Because I know a lot of you already have questions for the panelists before we even start. And then just remind me of a few gifts for you towards the end. So let's just dive right in. Tim, we were talking right before this panel. I do want to start with you just because you have the broadest view right now. Your index fund has 30 tickers in it. You're on both sides of the equation. What I mean by that is long, short. We've seen a massacre on one end of a lot of these ICOs, especially those that raised last year. Some are down 99%, some out entirely. In contrast, you could easily argue BTC is still up a few 100%. What on earth is going on in this market? Can you unpack it for us?
Let me clarify a few things. We have 5 share classes. One, our smallest, is actually an index. The ones that do the long short are the others. And I don't know if any of you guys are watching this, but I'm looking at 15-minute candles. And half an hour ago, we got a gap down. I haven't seen a gap up or down in BTC in ages on 3-minute candles. And we just
for people who aren't familiar with the technical definition, just explain that.
What it means, a candle measures the movement of in this case, a cryptocurrency or a crypto asset, as I prefer, what it's done in 15 minutes. And then at the end of that 15-minute period, another candle starts, as they're called. And it's just a vertical line. And occasionally what happens when you have low volume as a general rule, you see this a lot in low volume ICOs, is that where during one 50-minute period by coincidence it ends here, and the next 50-minute period will start here. So there'll be a gap down, there will be no regular trading, or a gap up, depending on what's happening in the markets. And you can find that, till, including today, I'm sure, you can find that in certain low-volume cryptocurrencies because there aren't any trades. So we may close out at 40 cents here and we'll pick up at 38 cents here, or vice versa. In something like Bitcoin, which has massive volume, you virtually never see that. You can go to 1-minute candles. I actually checked this last week to explain some of these things to one of my colleagues, and there were no gaps in the 1-minute candles. So there were so many transactions that one candle ended here, the next one started there. Whether it was up or down, it didn't matter. It was adjacent. When you have a gap down, that means you have a massive price movement where the movements are so fast that between the second one candle ends and the second the other candle begins, there's a gap. And it's huge because if you have, say, a stop order or any kind of order in that gap, it's not going to hit, or it's going to hit too late and too low.
Tim, gaps are bad, it sounds like, for those who are long. And just to be clear, you run a long-short hedge fund, and you're net short right now in this market.
Massively.
Right? Massively. Okay, let's turn next to you, Daniel. You run an index fund, $100 million in it, and we can talk about the tokenization of that, but your fund is net long, isn't that right?
Right, it's generally for people who believe in the long-term future of cryptocurrency, but obviously with the benefits of diversification over and above, picking any single winner.
So what are you seeing in this market? How do you explain the price action that we've seen so far this year?
how do we explain it? As a mass sell-off.
And that is, in your view, the end.
No, absolutely not. I think everybody's still very bullish, and there's been general good news all around so far this year. I think it's just a good correction. I mean, if you look year on year, we're still up, especially for Bitcoin.
Okay, so it matters on our perspective if we're looking over a long enough time period.
As you should be if you're investing for the long term with an index fund. You should definitely not be looking at 3 months or monthly performance.
Or year to date in this case.
Yeah.
Anu, one thing you told me earlier, so Anu has invested in a number of cryptocurrencies in the past. You told me you sold everything except for Bitcoin in particular. Can you explain, why you would do that?
I was following the news, and I just wanted to track one currency by the end of when is it? I want to say it was like August. I moved everything out of all the altcoins, and I just said if there's going to be one currency that I'm going to bet on, it's going to be Bitcoin, and let me just see how the market reacts, because everything was almost par, going up and down, and it just made sense to keep Bitcoin and follow that, and I'm happy with that decision so far.
Is it fair to say, though, that maybe you'll never invest in an ICO again?
Not really, because there's one that I'm looking at right now and potentially going to invest in. It's a couple of them, actually.
Okay, so you're in this market. We can unpack that some more.
Yeah.
Let's turn to you, Jeff. Jeff, early miner and investor in Bitcoin. Let's start at a really high level like we have with the rest of the panelists. What's going on in this market? Can you rationalize it?
Which market are you referring to?
The
shitcoin market or Bitcoin?
Well, we'll couple them together for now. Broadly, what we're looking at is
that's a mistake to couple them together. I think is part of the mistake.
Any defense you might have of being a Bitcoin maximalist, I'm sure I could refute. So it's. I mean, we could get into that, but I don't think that's the point of the discussion.
Well, Jeff, let's go back to your answer. Fair enough. If you want to distinguish the two, I think
one is my investment in Bitcoin is philosophical. It's about monetary sovereignty. Okay, so that's what the bet represents to me, is monetary sovereignty. And so before I owned Bitcoin, I owned gold. I have multiple gold mines I own, so I'm a big believer in monetary sovereignty. I think the financial system is fraudulent, and so my bet is very philosophical in nature. And I think that I think the economic system is basically driven by crony capitalism. So I'm against crony capitalism, and I'm for the sovereign individual. And the only way to be a sovereign individual is through monetary sovereignty. So my ownership of Bitcoin is an expression of my desire for monetary sovereignty. So I've never sold a Bitcoin. So from the perspective of everybody else on the panel, and that's not to make a value judgment about it, I'm just making a statement about myself, is I hold Bitcoin because that for me is my own expression of monetary sovereignty. So do I think that Bitcoin in the imminent future will be a global currency? No, I don't. But little by little, we're starting to see government fiat paper, okay, implode. So we see problems in Turkey, in Brazil, Argentina, Venezuela. So little by little, we're starting to see, and every fiat money regime has eventually collapsed.
Jeff, doesn't that build a bullish case?
My perspective,
yeah.
And again, it's not for, I don't want to forecast the price next 6 months or I don't take in investors. I don't have a fund. It's just my money. I don't have to worry about what my performance is quarter to quarter. I'm making a philosophical bet. And so I'm comfortable with the philosophical bet, and I'm not marking to market. I mean, obviously, big decline. If one goes from 19,000 to, 7,000, I've taken a big hit on my net worth. And I'm fine with that. So I thought it was overvalued at 19,000, and I told my friends, if you're trading it, get out. But I didn't get out, I stayed in because I'm in for a very, very different reason.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. So I believe my conviction that little by little more fiat paper systems, which, if somebody used the term anti-fragile before, the financial system is very fragile.
It sounds like you're bullish on Bitcoin prices.
Long term.
Long term.
Yeah, I'm not
What does
worried.
that-
I'm not
what does that
worried.
say
I'm not
for-
thinking about month to month and quarter to quarter.
What does that say for other cryptocurrencies, though, including others that I
I don't view them as cryptocurrencies, so I don't know. I think it's a misnomer. I don't know why it's referred to as cryptocurrency. One is the definition of currency and money. Okay, there's Adam Smith said, and I think that he was right on this, that something that has value, that has good value in use, has bad value in exchange, and something that has good value in exchange has bad value in use. So if you think about the broadest definition of money, okay, so if you take a look at the broadest monetary aggregate, of the broadest monetary aggregate, about 1/3 of that is for payments and 2/3 is for savings. So the question is which function is more useful for people? And if you look at most of the money is saved and not spent. So if you have to think about what attributes there are for something you use for payments has different attributes than what you use as a store of value. So the question is what are the attributes that's important to you, and how does that function with respect to the attribute that's important to you?
Thanks, Jeff. And I'll give you a moment to respond, Daniel. But first to New, you wanted to weigh in there?
I was saying that I lied when I said I just had Bitcoin. I actually have Bitcoin Cash also. Roger Ver downloaded a wallet on my phone, so I'm holding Bitcoin Cash as well. And I was trading Litecoin up until a period of time. It was working great for me, but for whatever reason, I let go of that as well. But there was somebody who commented in the last panel saying they have Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Bitcoin. And I would say that was, if I had to keep 4, it would be those 4 as well.
Well, this is news, and it puts some daylight between you and Jeff. Why bother holding the Bitcoin Cash too?
The wallet's still on my phone, so I lied. I said I told you I had nothing else.
And then why not sell all of your cryptocurrency? Why not sell the Bitcoin too?
Because I want to hold on to the Bitcoin, period. It's a psychological thing.
You just want to participate in the market.
Correct, and like him, it's
offensive.
philosophical for me also, and I want to hold on to it because I see inherent value. I do see it something that I want to hold on to long term, just like I'm holding gold, I'm holding diamonds, I'm holding silver, I have precious metals and things like that. So yeah, I'm going to hold on to it.
The diversification's there.
Yeah.
And Daniel, thanks for holding your tongue. I do want to go back to Tim on this.
Why are you doing that to him, poor guy?
Diversification from Fiat, right?
Yeah,
You're diversifying out of
exactly,
Fiat.
exactly.
Okay, and that's to the thesis. But Tim, what you're hearing here is you have 2 strong Bitcoin proponents. With everything else cratering, it's looking a little perchy.
I'm going to hire him to handle my altcoins next. I just didn't want to do it myself.
We'll get to Daniel. Don't worry. He'll get to dominate this for a bit, I promise. But Tim, on that question, I can repeat it. You're hearing from 2 kind of serious Bitcoin bulls here. At least that's where the limitations are, for the most part. Is it sounding a bit perchy? Where that's the remaining crypto that's still maybe inflated?
I view crypto assets as an asset class that one should manage and invest in. I'm not a libertarian. I'm not a hard money person, although I almost set up a hard money fund once with Bitcoin, gold, and silver in it, but Bitcoin so dominated it was pointless. So I look at this as an asset class. I want to make money, which I am measuring in fiat, and I understand there might be a Luddite aspect to that, but as long as I'm paying my credit cards in USD, I want to make my money in USD. So as I mentioned, we're massively short a whole range of cryptocurrencies right now. Today has been an absolutely spectacular day for us. And when we feel that we've reached the bottom, we're going to flip and we're go long. In terms of ICOs and in terms of so-called altcoins, I mean, look, it's quite easy to look at them. In the VC space, 90% of startups are failures. In the crypto space, ICOs, 90% of them are going to fail too. Because there's so much junk in them because of various regulatory and other aspects, probably you can say 50% of them are crap to begin with. So it's 90% of the other 50%. So I think a fairly good number is probably 5% of ICOs will survive. That doesn't mean you can't make money on the other 95% or most of the other 95% or some of the other 95% by buying as we do in pre-ICOs and selling at some point in time. And we've actually sold all of our ICO positions now because we saw the bear market coming. We're going to invest in some of them, hopefully the 5% that will survive, again in the future. But the idea is this is an investment class. So all of the rules and principles of investing, which are fiat rules and have been around for decades, they all apply in full to the crypto space.
100%.
You have to be a little flexible, you have to be fast, you have to stay up a lot of times, and you have to do what I'm doing, is look on your phone while you're in the middle of a panel, because I got my traders saying, go more, go short longer, or stuff, or go short more, I should say. But you have to make those accommodations to the space. The fundamental investment principles are identical.
Tim's trying to make money during our panel. Daniel,
no, I'm not trying. I am. I actually have.
Thanks for the correction. No, I appreciate that. Daniel, you've held your tongue. Thanks for your patience on this. If anything, actually, one answer to when you don't know what to pick is diversification, and that's exactly what your fund does. I do want to give you a chance, though, to respond to kind of a litany of the issues that have come up already.
Sure. A couple of interesting points. I heard diversification, from Fiat. I'm just curious as to why everyone is so against diversification within the crypto asset class then, and just focusing on Bitcoin. The second point would be, we have identified the first commodity metal currency, gold or form of savings. Why did we ever, look at silver once we had gold? Absolutely, but exactly, you've got gold and silver. Yeah. We got Bitcoin, and why are we just focusing on Bitcoin as the be-all and end-all when the transaction fees around January were more than the average monthly salary in most of Africa? It's difficult to imagine that, something that's the first thing, the first, motor vehicle might not have been as fast as, the first horse. Or, in comparison, a horse might still have been a better form of transport, but we didn't stop developing the car at that point. Just because an ICO or an alternative coin isn't the most perfect thing just out of the box, it doesn't mean we're going to stop, innovating. We need to continue innovating. And especially with regards to, there's alternative currencies. I think it's a silly position to have to focus on, a single currency, the first currency, as the ultimate. I think there should be, people should have an open mind and be willing to, look at alternatives for, what they are. There's no possible way that we can integrate all the other features of the altcoins into Bitcoin, because it's meant to be a lightweight, fast protocols with the balance of features being towards, security, decentralization. And there's not even consensus within Bitcoin's own community. If you look at Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and the 1,000 other Bitcoin forks, so there's definitely no way that all of those features will be integrated by consensus.
And so one thing I want you to clarify with the $100 million, clearly it's a successful fund, certainly at least raising the money, and to be clear, of course, the fund, because it holds the top 20 cryptocurrencies, it holds Bitcoin, right? And that's that weighting, you told me was changed weekly, is that right?
Well, the weighting doesn't, the weighting changes, obviously. We rebalance weekly, yes. We performed all the back tests monthly, lags the market significantly, and daily obviously has significant costs and operational complexity.
Yeah, and so your argument broadly is on diversification. It sounds like the investors vote with their feet, at least in part. I do want to set the technology, though, aside for a moment. We can come back to that. I do want to go to your analogy, though, between gold and then silver, for example. There's still a question, and I think those others on the panel would raise this, of whether there is quite a silver, because only Bitcoin is the one that's cleanly decentralized. Is your argument that Ether is decentralized sufficiently to warrant considering it as a commodity, for example, and trade in a way that Bitcoin would trade? Is that your argument?
My argument is that we didn't stop discovering alternative metals, alternative currencies once we discovered gold. So I don't think we should just stop at Bitcoin.
Sure. Now, Jeff, there's an inherent problem that you pointed out with that, right? And that did distinguish Bitcoin on this topic?
Well, I think, first there was sort of like an illusion that because you believe in Bitcoin, you have a closed mind and you're not looking at other things. Whatever conclusions I've reached about altcoins have not come from a closed mind. As I read hundreds of white papers. A lot of people come to me and ask me for advice, and I read people's white papers, and I give them their advice, and usually I tell them why I think their projects are shitty. So, and many of them try and modify their projects according to that, because the bad problem, part of the problem is they don't know how to design the token economy. So, but again, it's always this issue about, and this is like the debate between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, is again, is it a store of value or is it a form of payment? So I'm very skeptical about, for the short run, anybody competing with fiat for a form of payment. First, here we're in the United States right now, okay? So anyone, if you want to use a crypto for a form of payment, every time you use it as a form of payment, it's a taxable event. So I don't think anybody wants to use anything that's a taxable event that every time you use it. That's how the government eliminated gold as a competition for fiat, is they made the tax treatment of it so that every time you trade gold, it's a taxable event. So they tax Bitcoin like they tax gold in order so there would not be competition for payments. The governments do not want competition for payment systems. So they don't. Once they lose competition for payment systems, they can't track economic activity, and which means tax collection becomes much more difficult. So the fact that any crypto will ever expand into the payment system, I think it will in countries that implode. In countries that implode, where the government can no longer loses the power to enforce itself, that's where alternative currencies will emerge, and where governments can have force and people are intimidated by the force of governments, then nothing will compete against government-issued tender for payments, because the government will kill anything that attempts to compete with it as a payment.
And what about
so
if
that's
they
the
don't
reason
have
why
currency?
I'm very skeptical.
What happens if they don't have currency to begin with?
If who doesn't have currency?
Like Zimbabwe or
those are opportunities. Where a government has no ability to enforce itself.
Correct.
Then natural currencies will evolve organically.
Right.
Where governments can
case,
enforce
though,
themselves, you're not going to compete with government money as long as government enforce themselves.
Carve that as an exception.
That's why I focus on the store value argument, okay? And that's why I focus on the monetary sovereignty. I'm not going to be a sovereign individual by how I pay money, by how I make payments. What I'll be a sovereign individual is how I use for my savings, okay? I opt out of the fiat world for my wealth preservation.
Jeff, and real quick, let's drill down.
And when it comes to just the other comment about the other stuff about making money.
Well, no,
look,
Jeff,
a couple of months ago, a month ago, Bitcoin was...
Let's just drill down on the silver analogy, and then I want to get to Tim because he's shaking his head. There is no silver to Bitcoin in this analogy. Is that one of the things that we just... Oh, great,
Correct.
thanks. So, Tim, I saw you shaking your head. You had a response?
No, just lots of historical inaccuracies in what Jeff was saying.
Elaborate, please.
Look, on August 15th, 1971, Richard Nixon completed what Franklin Delano Roosevelt started in 1932. He completed taking the U.S. off the gold standard. The process was started by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It had nothing to do with taxation or anything else, nor is Bitcoin taxable when you pay with it. It's taxable when you realize any value and realize a capital gain if you have any capital gains.
That's my point. If you no
capital gains, Jeff.
If you're using it as a form of payment.
I didn't interrupt you. Please don't interrupt me. So if you just purchased it and you use it to buy something else, you have no capital gains. So you have no taxable event.
Yes.
Anyway, Franklin Delano Roosevelt actually made the ownership of gold in the United States illegal. It was never used as a payment here, but until 1932, the rule in the United States was, and you could see this on Federal Reserve notes, you could actually go into a Federal Reserve bank and get gold against your notes because the US dollar was gold backed. Even then, in 1932, it wasn't 100% gold backed, but no one was really paying that much attention to it. It was, to a significant degree, gold-backed. And what happened between 1932 and 1971 is the percentage of the US dollar that was backed by gold was progressively reduced by executive order. And in August 1571, that backing was completely broken. So Bretton Woods, the 1946 agreement in New Hampshire after World War II that established fixed exchange rates, it collapsed at that point in time, and there are a lot of hard money advocates that were panicking, and at that point in time, exchange rates began to float, and then you also had a lot of other currencies that came out. So I understand hard money guys. Like I said, I actually thought about, at the request of hard money guys, creating a fund that had gold, silver, and Bitcoin in it. I understand the logic. I understand its appeal. I don't personally agree with it, but it's got a right to exist. The thing that I find about many people who are involved in the crypto space is that they don't have a good understanding of fiat financial history. And honestly, many people in the fiat space don't have a good understanding of fiat financial history, which is why you get someone like Jamie Dimon who compares Bitcoin to tulip mania at the end of the 16th century. And then what he's telling you is he doesn't understand anything about Bitcoin, and he also doesn't understand anything about that era of fiat financial history. So I think it's very important to rely on facts versus rumor and to verify information, because there is so much unverified information about the crypto space in particular, or so much information, it's hard to separate truth from fact. But also, if you really explore crypto and what crypto is, what you end up doing is looking back at fiat and understanding where fiat was and where fiat came from, where it's evolved, because crypto assets or tokens, or whatever you want to call them, are a very logical extension of the fiat financial system.
Thanks, Tim. Jeff, I'll give you a second to respond. I do want to go to you, Anu, on this note. One of the things that you brought up was basically other regimes, other countries, and there is a bit of a concern that what the ICO market looked like over the last 2 years was just opportunism in regulatory gaps. Is that where you were pressing on?
No, I wanted to just clarify.
Sure.
So we're live streaming this to crypto queens and women investing in women. What he's trying to say is, in God we trust. Who is God? So this is the thing. We've got currency. We've got fiat. We've got fiat.
Please don't put words in
my
mouth.
No. It's we've got fiat. So what is fiat at the end of the day? What is this currency that we're following, right? No, is that not correct?
And Anu, actually, can you answer my question?
Tell me.
Do you see, looking backwards now at this ICO market, that it was perhaps just regulatory gap, regulatory opportunism in raising all this money?
I think there were opportunistic investors overseas. There still are at this point in time, and I think they were ahead of the curve, and they cashed out as a result of it because they saw gaps in the market, and now we're having a correction, and that's basically it. Okay,
and on that note, though, looking forward, then you don't see a return to that heyday. Is that right?
I don't see returns today?
A return to that heyday. The ease with which ICOs
not
raise money.
Triple or quadruple digits like we saw last year. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but that's my perception.
I'm going to get back to you, Daniel, shortly. And Tim, sounds like you have a spokesperson, but you're in disagreement right off the bat. Jeff, I know you had a few points you wanted to make, and appreciate you staying on this topic on the ICO market. But you had a response, Jeff?
Yeah, I don't know what allusion to there was a fact of things that are misstatement about history. Gold has served a role backing money for a long period of time, and the Constitution specifically defines the dollar in units of gold and silver. And the issue actually that caused Roosevelt to threaten to stack the courts was actually to remove the gold clauses in contracts. So essentially the government wanted to default on the fact that they were debasing the currency and didn't want to pay in units of gold, and so they wanted to just pay in a debased currency. So that was the issue that Roosevelt was fighting with the courts was the gold clauses embedded in financial contracting.
Jeff,
when it came back to August 1971, and I know that very well because in August 1971 I was 15 years old, and when Nixon revoked gold, I took out all the money I had from my bar mitzvah and savings bonds, okay, bought a gold stock, and gold was $35 an ounce then. Okay, and then gold was over $600 an ounce 3 years later. So that's how good money and gold is, even with the market, gold is $1,200 now relative to where. So that's a pretty big debasement of fiat money in terms of gold since 1971. I think that's pretty considerable. So unless we're going to argue with these facts that they're not facts, that gold was 35 then and 1,200 now, and Bitcoin was close to zero in 10 years ago, and it's 6,900 now. I guess those are not facts.
Jeff,
money by definition,
Jeff,
by definition is debased every day.
Jeff, thanks. It's just it's really interesting, but it's also a lot of it's off topic. You definitely made what appears to be a bull case on the market, but particularly in Bitcoin. We're all listening, I promise. I want to give one last word to Daniel, and then I do want to go to the crowd. I know you guys have questions. Daniel, on this market, we're looking forward. I do want to ask you, you have all these investors. What is their sentiment? Are they pulling their funds? Are they plowing in? Are they more bullish than ever looking forward? What's your take?
We had a fair amount of redemptions, I guess, around January to March, but since then, almost none. I mean, even at the bottom, I suppose people, the weak hands have been shaken out. I mean, it doesn't look like that if you look at CoinMarketCap today, but at least the investors in the fund have a long-term view, and that's their aim. But with reference to the topic that we're discussing, the golden age of ICOs, we have a venture capital fund, and when we're looking at ICOs now, I mean, it's just like looking at venture capital projects. It's not just investing in something because it's an ICO, like people saw last year. It's actually looking at the fundamentals of the project itself, evaluating that, and seeing if there's an investment case.
Real quick, of the 20 though that the index fund is invested in, I do want to ask you this: are you bearish on any of those 20? Do you think any one of those 20 will fail? Can you name one?
Absolutely. I mean,
which one would you say is most likely to fail? Just tell us right now, Daniel.
If I was excluding Tether, which is in the top 20 at the moment, I think number 21 was Dogecoin, which is a meme.
Just went up.
But you're not invested in Dogecoin though, right?
The fund isn't, no. But I mean, it's part of the top 20.
And how about Tether? Is there any sort of investment in Tether?
Well, it's not an investment. It's pegged to the dollar.
Sure. Well, then let's go back to those 20, because I do want you to answer this, and I do want to turn to the crowd. Of the 20, which are you most bearish on?
Which am I most bearish on?
Yeah,
The entire top 20.
Oh, the entire top 20? Was that the answer?
It's difficult to say. I mean, as we don't take active positions as an index fund.
Can you just name one that you don't think is going to survive while we have you?
I don't think I should be providing investment advice.
Okay, well, you can plead the fifth. I won't press you anymore on that. I hope you found this riveting, everyone.